Hello everyone, Merry Christmas. Thanks for tuning into these live streams. These have been really exciting and helpful to a lot of people. We've been able to reach thousands and thousands of people with Facebook's new technology. So let me also say thank you very much, Facebook, for offering this opportunity for us to be able to reach out to our fan base. The Petersen for President campaign today is... Sorry about that. So like I was saying, the Petersen campaign is going to be doing an explanation of our policy platform planks. And the policy platform planks exist at austinpetersen2016.com on the platform page. So if you go to our platform page now and you want to pull it up and follow along with us, you can prepare your questions at the end of this show. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the website and explain to you my thinking when I formulated these planks. A lot of people have been sending me questions. Austin, what do you believe? What do you say? So hopefully people who can tune in and watch this video and see what it is, why I say I believe certain things, even though some things may seem contradictory. And I'll explain my thinking and methodology. The first platform plank that I've written is about taxes and spending. And some of you may have already seen me talk about this. I think that a firm tax and spending plan is an important cornerstone of a libertarian presidential campaign. You have to be able to understand the economy in order to govern effectively. And I think that the major problem that we've had with presidential candidates in the past and current presidential candidates is that they believe that government spending creates jobs. And that's really the biggest fallacy that we have to debunk as libertarians. And in fact, if you take a look at our measurements of the economy, the gross domestic product, for example, the GDP, if you look at the GDP actually includes government spending in overall growth, as if you could take a bucket of water out of one end of the pool and dump it into the other end of the pool and somehow increase the overall volume. And that's really what is at stake here. We've got to talk about what economics means. And there's a really big problem, I think, with education today because they don't teach economics in school. Certainly I didn't learn economics. They had home ec class, but it wasn't required. They don't even teach you how to balance a checkbook in schools. And I think that that's a real problem. So we need to have a strong, in order to have a strong economy, we need American citizens educated about how economics works. And I'd like to recommend some books to start off. One of the best books that you can start with is Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt. So if you guys are new to the economics world, you might want to check out that book, Henry Hazlitt, Economics in One Lesson. And if you aren't big on reading, which I assume a lot of people aren't, then one of the ways that you can get yourself sort of into economics is the kind of a roundabout way, is to watch Free to Choose by Milton Friedman. And he does a tremendous job of explaining just exactly how markets work and how money works. Because really, what is money? You know, I think that if we're going to talk about economics, of course, you have to talk about the basis of our economy, which is the currency. And I'll get into my platform plank on currency in just a moment. But you have to have a base understanding of monetary policy and of taxes and spending. This is a nerdy economist joke that I only break out with my super nerd friends, but when I'm hanging out with Steve Horowitz and guys, I'll be like, monetary policy is how money, the difference between monetary policy and fiscal policy. Oh no, I'm killing this joke. The difference between monetary policy and fiscal policy is monetary policy is about how money is created and fiscal policy is about how it's destroyed. Wah, wah, wah. Because obviously fiscal policy is about taxes and spending, which is my first public policy platform plank that we need to discuss right here, taxes and spending. The first thing I would like to do is to reduce economic inequality by lowering barriers to entry into the marketplace, licensing, taxation, and fees. Now, what do I mean when I say that? Reducing economic inequality. So most libertarians, they chafe at the idea when Democrats talk about economic inequality because we understand the concepts of rising tides lifting all boats, and that in a free market system that inequality isn't what counts, but that the average of people, the middle class, everyone gets lifted up. But if we have inequality in a system, it's possibly not created by the free market. It's actually not created by the free market. Inequality is mostly driven by government subsidies. For example, if you were to get a major subsidy for a defense industry, perhaps, or a major subsidy for a government contract for agriculture, for example, they even pay you not to grow tobacco in certain farms. So they're paying you not to compete in the marketplace. And that's really where you get the distortions in the marketplaces. And that's what creates inequality, because if you're a big corporation, you have the ability to sort of game the system and to eke out your competitors and to gain a substantive win. And the government is essentially picking winners and losers. So what would reducing economic inequality do? Like lowering taxes actually helps smaller producers to compete with larger producers, because the smaller producers spend a larger portion of their overall income in the basic necessities that they need, whereas the larger competitors have had years to do things like purchase computers and assets that will last over time. And perhaps they deserve that victory for having invested, being early investors. But in order for us to have a dynamic, competitive economy, we need to talk about what it means to reduce the amount of government intervention into the marketplace. And that comes to licensing, taxation, and fees. I mean, I could go for an hour to talk about licensing, taxation, and fees, but I think that if you understand the basic principle of how the government is creating inequality by raising taxes, creating licensing for hair braiders, for example. You can't braid hair without a license. And then I think that you're really on the path towards more economic equality, in a sense, where we really have quality of opportunity, not equality of outcome, because I think that, free people are not equal, and equal people are not free. So moving on to the next, urge Congress to adopt the penny plan, across-the-board spending cuts of 1% per program. Now, I've explained this in my policy video that is on austinpetersen2016.com, and if you'd like, you can join us. Go to austinpetersen2016.com and click on the platform planks, and you can follow along from home, kids. It's feeling a little Mr. Rogers right now. Will I do the truffle shuffle for a substantial donation? Probably not, guys, but I appreciate the live stream viewers, audience watching right now. So moving on, let's see. Oh, my computer's frozen. Let's see, I'll have to pull up Safari. Darn you, Max. Let's see. Free people are not equal and equal people are not free. That's correct. Yes, thank you. I think I sort of bastardized that from a Milton Friedman quote that was a little bit, probably even more succinct. What do I think about the deep web? Actually, I haven't done much investigation into the deep web. I understand it's sort of the black market of the internet marketplace. But in terms of the deep web, what you're really talking about is sort of cryptography. And you're talking about the ability to transact business that sort of goes underneath the government radar. Well, I'm all for keeping as much of your money as possible. I don't think I can advocate for illegal things running a live stream, but yeah, I'm in favor of privacy online and people's ability to have transactions that aren't being viewed by every single person. I don't like the fact that the IRS has to track every single thing that we buy and sell online. That to me is a problem. I don't want taxes online, that's for sure. So yes, all right, so austinpetersen2016.com, and you go to the platform page. I'm actually pulling up my phone right now because I have a little technical difficulties with my computer. But if you go to austinpetersen2016.com and click on the platform page, you can follow along, and here we go. Number 2, national defense and military. And I did do a video on this as well, so make sure you bookmark that if you get a chance. And I want to just preface, of course, that this military policy isn't something that I just kind of cooked up in my own feverish brain here. This military policy was given to me by a top former spy who is a sort of a Reagan conservative and someone who I trust greatly on national defense issues. He's someone that I worked with I've worked with for years, and who is a trusted senior advisor to my campaign. I can't reveal who he is because he's asked not to, but I just wanted you to know that my military policy, although I don't have a military background, I do have a Russian Mosin Nagant, though, and I can, as you saw the other day, I can really fire that thing. I blew up a pumpkin the other day on a live stream. But talking about national defense and militaries is a very important subject. And I said that we should strengthen national security by reducing and ending foreign aid to nations hostile to the United States. Now, someone kind of tried to get me have a gotcha question there and say the other day, like, well, which countries would you cut funding from? Well, there actually are polls that are done in countries in the Middle East. They do polling on what people think about the United States, and if they have an overwhelmingly negative opinion of the United States, why are we subsidizing them? And these countries I have identified, and I will reveal in further policy discussions, but I will go on narrowing down our order just on the number one state or the number one governments which are opposed to our interests, which somehow still receive subsidies. I'm opposed to all subsidies whatsoever in any form of foreign governments. But if the president is not a dictator and most of this is done through legislation, then I think that it's important, of course, for us to work through Congress. And remember that the president is not a dictator. So we should work with Congress in order to reduce our obligations of spending overseas. And moving on down to the next point in here. Reconsider overseas troop deployments in areas not important to U.S. national security, and audit the Pentagon. I would reform the Veterans Affairs Administration. Very good, important points. I would like to bring all the troops home, of course, but I think that might be detrimental to our national security. So at that time, I would be able to make a decision about where it might be okay for us to pull our troops out, like Korea, for example. Ideologically, I think that it would be wise to do so, but sometimes it's very important, I think, for you to look at the realities that you have, and sometimes the president might have access to classified information that we don't have as citizens. So I have to, unfortunately, ask the people to do something that I never do for politicians, which is to say, you need to find someone good that you can trust to make some of these decisions. Because if you were presented with a classified briefing on intel about terrorist attacks or of a potential strike on the U.S. national security, national soil or our assets or interests, then you would take that very seriously. And I hope that a libertarian president would do be a wise and prudent leader and make the right decisions about where we can draw down our troops and not ramp up hostilities. Because if you say you will apply a consistent ideological philosophy across the board, well, you're forgetting how inconsistent the world is. And sometimes circumstances change on the ground, and you have to be able to react to those situations. So while we can talk about philosophy all day long, sometimes it's important for us to decide how can we apply our philosophy to the world as it shifts around us. And conservatives have the same problem with their fallacy, the same fallacy with their philosophy as well. They see a difference between how with their principles and ideals and how they can actually govern. Moving on here, I want to talk about auditing the Pentagon. So I think it's important for us to talk about how we can cut our budgets, and if we're going to be cutting our budgets, every single government program, including the Department of Defense, should be prone to these cuts if there is waste. And the Pentagon deserves a full and thorough audit, just like every other government institution. Reforming the Veterans Affairs Administration. This is a really good one, and one that I'm very happy to talk about. I have a lot of veterans. I have a lot of veterans who have joined my campaign, and they asked me this question about what I will do about the Veterans Affairs Administration. I would like to eliminate the Veterans Affairs Administration, and the reason why is because I think that if we want to have health care for our veterans, for example, why should we take that money and then give it to a bureaucrat who's going to take a majority of it? Why not just give it directly to the veterans? So why don't we just make the veterans happy and let them buy their own health care in the private market? I'm going to pull a Marco Rubio here for just a second. I hope that was way less awkward than his State of the Union water drinking. But yes, I want to talk about eliminating the Department of Veterans Affairs and just taking the money that we're spending already, which would be at a surplus, because we wouldn't be spending it on the bureaucracy. That money should go directly to the people who have served our country, and we should honor and respect them and not have a policy that forces them to commit suicide in parking lots waiting to get care. Moving on, free trade. Lower barriers to trade with foreign nations and allow American companies the leeway they need to develop domestic energy production in order to create good-paying jobs at home. Now, you see how sneaky I am with my rhetoric here and my terminology, because the way that I'm wording these libertarian concepts is very similar to how a Bernie Sanders might use his rhetoric, or perhaps someone like Donald Trump might word his rhetoric, as if I'm giving you something. But what am I really saying here? What I'm saying is, by lowering barriers to trade with foreign nations and allowing American companies the leeway they need to develop a domestic energy production, these libertarian policy precepts will create jobs. And that's what I think the American voters want to hear. How is a libertarian going to create jobs? If the president says to the American people, if the libertarian presidential candidate says to the American people, I can't create jobs, the government can't create jobs, the end, then I think we'll probably not win a lot of votes. But if we can say, yes, well, the government can't directly create jobs, but it can create a lot of jobs by getting out of the way and giving opportunities to companies and lowering their taxes and lowering their cost to hire, like eliminating the payroll tax. If you couch libertarian philosophy in sort of, I guess you'd say, statist rhetoric, then you can actually do a good job at convincing people that libertarian policy prescriptions will work. I'm really excited to see how many people are watching the show, by the way, guys. 270, wow, almost 300 people on. This is very impressive. And I will get to your questions also after this, so make sure you leave them in the chat, because I'll grab my computer and hopefully it'll be working by then. And I'll be able to answer your questions at the end of the show. Moving on, monetary policy. Yes, this is my favorite. I love it, I love it. Auditing the Federal Reserve. The audit of the Federal Reserve is actually potentially going to be passed this year. Rand Paul's senatorial legislation looks as if it has an opportunity to get through, and Mitch McConnell has signaled that there might actually be an audit of the Fed. Of course, I think it's a problem that there will be probably no revelations as to the M3 monetary supply or the overall total quantity of money in the system, which I would like to know. I think a lot of people would like to know. But of course, the Fed plays its public-private role very well. It's very slippery. And an audit perhaps could give us some opportunity to have some sunlight into the Federal Reserve. And I would like to see that happen. Of course, I would like to end the Federal Reserve. But if we can't end the Fed right away through legislation, perhaps we can end it through competition. And that takes me to my next part of my monetary policy plank. And that's that we should institute a monetary commission devoted to studying the implications of replacing central banking with free banking and abolishing laws of legal tender. And what does that mean exactly? What are we talking about here? Well, of course, Ronald Reagan had a monetary policy commission in the 80s. It was sort of a give to Ron Paul, in a sense, for supporting Ronald Reagan's candidacy for the presidency, for the White House. And what he did was he instituted a monetary policy commission that was to study a return of the dollar to gold. And of course, I think that the outcome was always going to be predetermined. And unfortunately, Milton Friedman worked against Ron Paul on this monetary policy commission and voted against him. But Ron Paul stood with another gentleman who's actually a very good friend of mine, who's a wonderful libertarian, and I think more people should read about him and learn about him. His name is Lou Lehrman, and he wrote Case for Gold with Ron Paul as the people who were the voting minority on that commission. But I would like to institute a monetary policy commission with a little bit more teeth. And this would not be one that would be looking at a return to the gold standard, because I think a gold standard is still fiat. And to believe that the government would not manipulate the price of gold, I think is perhaps a bit naive. So I would like to look at what we can do to institute alternative institutions of currency, and how we might do that is to talk about free banking. And what that means is really private, real private banking, not this quasi-private bank that we have right now, this Federal Reserve, this monster. I will rout you out, and by God, I will rout you out, you den of vipers. A Petersen presidency is decidedly bearish on a Federal Reserve. But how would I institute real changes? Well, you need to talk about abolishing laws of legal tender. And of course, the president can't just abolish laws. I've got to obey the laws, and I have to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. But I think that having a discussion about what real private banking would do for the American economy would be good for the American people. And yeah, a lot of people would rather watch Kim Kardashian and stuff, and maybe we can sex up the Monetary Policy Commission in some way. But for now, I think it's important for us to have a real study about how we might restore a free market system in banks. And let me tell you, boy, the banks do not want this. And that's why, the Libertarians don't get the big donations. They don't get the Goldman Sachs money, But hopefully I can get the Koch money. I mean, I will be trying to reach out to the Koch brothers. They're two great heroes of mine. I don't think they have any idea who I am. But if anybody's in Kansas and knows the Kochs, have them call me, Charles and David. But of course, the banking system, they do not want to change the banking system at all. They have a sweetheart deal with the federal government, and a Libertarian candidate would end that sweetheart deal. So yes, a monetary policy commission that looks at abolishing laws of legal tender, basically allowing things like bitcoins or gold and silver to compete. We don't, as Friedrich Hayek once said, he said, we don't know what good money is because we haven't had an opportunity to know what good money is. We haven't had a chance to learn what it is because the marketplace is a discovery process. How do you know that there needs to be an Uber, right? Entrepreneurs will perhaps create a currency that will be even more efficient, a digital currency. I mean, it is a digital world after all, and the federal government is still operating on paper terms. So we should allow the private market to create money and allow people to have the right to choose what kind of money they would like to have instead of a fiat, forcible currency system. I can see I'm losing viewers with this boring talk, so I should move on. Immigration. I'd like to streamline our immigration system by following updated Ellis Island-styled protocols. Security check, disease check, done. Yes, I think it's important for us to have immigration reform in this country, and we need to have a more libertarian view about immigrants. And I understand the national security issues that are involved when it comes to accepting foreign people. And in that vein, there should be a basic security check and a disease check, and that should be about it. The best way, perhaps, to deal with immigrants or refugees is to allow people to privately sponsor refugees or immigrants, provided they're a U.S. citizen themselves. But I think we need to have a border just like we do a border with Canada. If we want to have friendly relations with other nations, then we need to embody these American principles that we hold up as ideal and not build walls like they did at the end of World War II. It's important for us to remember that a free society, a free market in commodities works the same way, or excuse me, free market in labor works the same way as a free market in commodities. And when I talk about a free market in labor, I'm talking about why does the government have any business interfering in private contracts between employers and employees? There are so many worker protections acts in this country that I think are a big problem. And I just saw somebody said that I should say "mo roads" as a way to keep people on the live stream. But we're talking about immigration now, so hopefully people are a little more interested. But we need to talk about building less walls. Of course, it's important for us to understand what free markets in labor and trade mean. Free markets in labor and trade mean that an employer can choose who he wants to hire at any rate. So that would mean that there would be no minimum wage either. And people who decide to take a job can agree to take a lower wage if they choose. And it's important. I shared a meme on this earlier today, a Milton Friedman meme, and we were talking about what a minimum wage really does. And it hurts people who are unskilled. So if you have less skills, then the employer is going to have to pass you by to find someone with more skills. So yeah, it doesn't work. It's not libertarian, and it doesn't really, in the end, it doesn't bear out facts that it really helps people. It only helps a very narrow amount of people who already have those minimum wage jobs. But minimum wage jobs aren't the kind of jobs that you really want to make careers out of, are they? I think it's important for us to remember that a minimum wage job is not for a lifetime. So let's talk about the next issue, constitutional priorities. Work with Congress to institute new protocols that will protect national security while placing the balance of weight towards due process and individual rights. No beheadings without due process. And that is a little joke, but it is also true. I think it's important for us to have a discussion again, have a discussion in this country about due process and what due process really means. And we're talking here specifically about drones, and we're talking about Guantanamo Bay. We're talking about the National Security Agency being able to spy or to being able to read Americans' metadata or get information about American citizens through blanket warrants, which is absolutely unconstitutional. But in order for us to do that, to reinstitute new protocols, we're going to have to talk about what kind of legislation we need to have stronger checks and balances. Because, for example, if you're a terrorist overseas and you've declared war against the United States, there does need to be some sort of a defense protocol against you. But how can we protect due process and maintain national security? I do speak with a lot of military experts about this problem, and I actually do have quite a few friends from the former Bush White House. And they're neoconservatives, of course, but I listen to people even that I disagree with, and we rage at one another all the time, but we're still friends. They explained to me the problems with Guantanamo Bay, of course, with people who are declared enemy combatants, for example. There was no proper legal method to ensure due process for these people because, of course, if you are going to have the natural right to face your accusers, well, how can you bring a terrorist, how can you capture them and bring them to the United States for justice? You can't always do that. In fact, sometimes a terrorist may be preparing to have an imminent attack against the United States, and you have to be able, as president, to make sometimes an executive decision. So how do you have due process? We're going to have to redefine that, and actually we're going to need to get good libertarian lawyers, scholars, perhaps people like Randy Barnett, and maybe even my good ANCAP buddy Robert Murphy, the economist. So with people like that, we can have conversations about ways that we can redefine due process so that it works with the 21st century technology. Right now, and this is something that I've spoken up with Judge Napolitano about when it comes to due process. Judge Napolitano says that the precedent is that you can only shoot at someone or attack someone illegally if they have picked up a weapon and are preparing to go into the battlefield. And that's a problem. And yes, and Tom Woods, if you've picked up and are preparing to enter the battlefield, well, of course, many of the people who are killed by drone strikes are going to weddings. And so the question is like, was it a legitimate use of force? I think the judge would say no in those cases, but perhaps he would say yes if that person had picked up an AK-47 and was preparing to kill American soldiers, then it would be justified to kill them. And it's important for us to have these kinds of distinctions. So I would actually, if I were elected president of the United States, I would absolutely place Judge Napolitano in a position of prominence and importance in crafting American legal policy, having him set precedent for the next 10, 20, 30 years, as long as he will be around. And so it's important for us, again, to discuss about what due process really means in the 21st century. And because I think that it's going to have to be redefined so that we can have real checks and balances again, because I think as of now, the president's power has become too unilateral. Let me take a little quick break real quick. I have to take a drink of water, of course, but I also want to ask you guys to please, if you're enjoying this show today, to send me just $3. I'm asking for $3, at least $3. Of course, you can donate more, but please donate at least $3 of the campaign today at austinpetersen2016.com/donate. And the reason why we asked for $3 is because we found out that Hillary Clinton was getting rich off of it. Ashley actually told me that. Wait a minute. No, it's not true. Ashley's going to come correct me. I'm almost done with the policy plank, but come hop in here, Ashley, and tell me what's on. Yeah, come on. I've got your chair all set up right here. You guys didn't know you were going to get 2 for the price of 1 today. Yeah, go ahead. So have a seat.
No, I was just saying. Oh, okay. There I am.
Yeah. Hello.
Hi. So, no, it wasn't Hillary Clinton's campaign. Hillary Clinton and a lot of other presidential campaigns started using the $3 donation amount because after studies done on Barack Obama's campaign, the most donations that he got were $3 donations. So I've studied that pretty heavily, and he started that. So
awesome.
That's where it came
That's
from.
why she's the fundraising director. So we'll listen to her.
Oh,
okay. All right.
That's fundraising.
All right.
And
Okay.
please, so on that note, would you please give us $3 at least today? Because look, we need a new laptop.
Yeah.
My screen is cracked, so
she broke her computer yesterday.
We've got to also. I gently laid it down and. Apparently it wasn't gently enough. So the screen is broken, And anyway, donate $3, please.
Yeah, send us $3. Help us get a new
Help me
computer.
get a new laptop.
Which actually, that reminds me, we were talking yesterday about one thing that we thought we could do to be really helpful.
Right.
If you guys have extra computers or technology,
Yeah, any extra equipment
that would
like
be
that
super helpful
that you
for
don't
us.
use,
And we can take those kinds of in-kind donations.
Yeah, we can.
So if you have like
contributions.
printers or
yeah.
extra cell phones, things like that. Yeah, anything like that you can send us, we would really appreciate it. And the address of the campaign is at the bottom of the website. So if you go to austinpetersen2016.com today and you send us $3, you can also find the address down there. And if you have any questions, there's a contact email at the top of the website, contact@petersen2016.com. So do us a favor, send us $3 or send us an old laptop that you guys don't use, an old camera, anything that you think would be useful to the campaign.
External hard drives.
Thumb drives, flashcards, anything like that.
Yeah.
Okay? Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
All right, thanks, Ashley.
All right,
I'm going to continue discussing my policy.
I had to correct that.
Yeah, okay. She had to correct that. All right. Cool. All right, so moving on, back onto the platform planks. Let's see. Crime and punishment. Reclassify the war on drugs as a medical problem, not a criminal problem. Deschedule drugs at the federal level. Now, a lot of people talk about drugs and let's legalize all the drugs, or let's decriminalize all the drugs. But I think that I've found the legal solution, the best way to approach this legally, so that we can actually affect real change for ending the war on drugs. And that's descheduling them. That's what the president actually has the power over. The president could end the federal war on drugs simply by taking all the drugs off of the scheduling list. This would mean, though, that the states would be able to set their own policies. And Texas might, for example, give the death penalty for looking at a joint. So it's important for us to remember that just because you allow more federalism, it doesn't mean you're going to get more liberty. Some states might be less libertarian, and so it's really important for us to understand what that means. Some natural individual rights should exist irrespective of federalism. And a good example of that would be when the federal government struck down Jim Crow laws, for example. So there is an important purpose for the federal government, and that is constitutional, which states that the federal government must institute a Republican form of governance in every state. So yes, let's move on. The war on drugs. Yes, we want to end the war on drugs. Constitutional priorities, crime and punishment, reforming entitlements. Oh, someone else also asked if I would free nonviolent drug offenders before I move on. Yes, I absolutely would. Reforming entitlements. Allowing young people to opt out of Social Security. Oh, this is a good one, and boy, it's one that I love to talk about, because wouldn't it have been wonderful to be given an option when you're 18 to opt out of Social Security? I think it's important that we maintain the priorities that we have right now and to pay everyone who's paid into the system, because it's not really welfare, it's more like a Ponzi scheme. So I think that it's important for us to talk about how we can get out of Social Security. And how that's going to work is, in order for us to let young people out of Social Security, we're going to have to pay out the people who have already paid. And then as the older generations begin to pass away, then the younger generations will have the retirement plans, the private market retirement plans. I think it's really an important discussion for the American people to look at our entitlement programs, reforming entitlement programs. But I never liked the idea of cutting promises to people once they've already been made. But I would like to discuss the possibility of cutting promises made to federal employees, perhaps. Maybe they should take a cut in their pensions. Maybe we should raise the federal retirement age for all federal employees. And maybe we should cut their pensions. But why is it always that the American citizen has to take a haircut, and that we should ask our government to do that before us? So do us a favor, guys. If you're enjoying this discussion, please go to austinpetersen2016.com. We're asking for $3 today, and I think that somebody just asked a really good question that I'd like to answer. It's about police brutality, and that's back on the crime and punishment issue. I think that a fish rots from the top. And when you're talking about the executive branch, of course, if the president is mismanaging his job at the White House and he's not doing a good job and he's not sending the proper signals down the supply chain for justice in terms of the police and the courts and the military, then I think that there are going to be problems with police brutality. And as a libertarian, if I were president of the United States, I would ensure that constitutional protection, that every single police officer understood the law and the natural law and those rights which each individual has. And to reiterate, of course, that the job of the police is to serve and protect. The president is a public servant, and so are the police. I would like for us to have more Mayberry than Fallujah approach to governance. I don't like the idea of the truncheon or the boot heel. I do not like the idea of cracking down on citizens, especially for this disastrous war on drugs. So I think when you're talking about police brutality, it's important for the president to set a precedent and to make sure that police are accountable. And you know what is actually, this is a great tool, the live streaming technology that I'm using right now. This will be an important tool for citizens. I think it's important for citizens to record their government as much as the government is recording them, recording us. I think that when it comes to police brutality, if more citizens stood up and held police accountable, then I think it's important for us to hold our government accountable the same way that they do us, you know. So, all right, moving on to the next platform plank. Let me grab my computer here and see if she's working yet. We need some new computers, guys. If you can send it to us, we would really appreciate your equipment. Leftover Macs, leftover PCs, anything that you guys can send to us to help us out with, would be very grateful for. All right, moving on to the next platform plank. Restoring health freedom. Overturn Obamacare, seek out market alternatives to problems of health and wellness. I believe in a free market in pretty much everything. You know, legalize everything, I like to say, or what's to say, privatize all the things. Especially our health care, especially our most vital industries, the ones that are keeping us alive. You trust me, every doctor who works wants to get paid, and the higher their pay, the more lucrative it is, the more doctors will have. But if you cut benefits to doctors and force them to accept Medicaid, Medicare, force doctors to accept these government programs, you're demanding a part of the doctor's time. You're making it less attractive to be a doctor. We want more doctors and nurses. We want them to be higher paid. In fact, I like to compare the same thing to the teaching industry. People complain about teachers, but remember, guys, you know, if teachers lived and died on the free market the same way that doctors do in so many ways, imagine teachers' pay might rise. If people say teachers are underpaid, well, it may be because their salaries tend to be set by the local school boards, and they tend to be set by the government policies. Why don't we talk about a free market in healthcare? And if the first thing that I would do as President of the United States would be to ask Congress to send me legislation overturning Obamacare immediately. That is my top priority upon taking office is to abolish that legislation and to institute free market protocols. And I would work with Congress in order to abolish Obamacare, because it tripled the cost of premiums for so many people and reduced the amount of benefits. That directly happened to me. It's really important, again, ladies and gentlemen, that we get the government out of our most private transactions, and nothing could be more, I guess, sacrosanct than the relationship between doctors and patients. Yeah, tablets. I see you guys. Hey, Ben Clarkson. How's it going, buddy? Yeah, tablets, any kind of technology like that, we can make good use of, because we can take those and give them to volunteers to use to look up data, do research for us. So any kind of technology like that will be extremely helpful. So take a look at austinpetersen2016.com. There's an address at the bottom. You can send it to Petersen for President, to the address at the bottom of the website. But also do us a favor, guys. If you got $3, send us $3 today, and that will help us to have a strong showing in the Libertarian presidential primary next year. Okay, restoring health freedom. Yes, I already explained my free market healthcare plan. Defending life, encouraging a culture of life and adoption, and educating Americans about the consistent pro-life ethic, which also means abolishing the death penalty. And this is a very difficult topic, of course, because the abortion is in the Libertarian platform. the Libertarian platform on abortion for the party is that the government has no business being involved. And I mostly agree with that. I think that that's probably the right way to go politically because there's such a disagreement on it. But personally, I am pro-life, but not for the reasons that you might think. A lot of people look at my position on pro-life and they automatically assume that perhaps I am some radical right-wing crazy Christian, you know, and left-wing libertarians will attack me and say, oh, Austin, you're just a conservative Republican. I'm like, there is nothing conservative about me. My position on abortion comes from an ethics position. I am a secular humanist. I am an agnostic, technically an agnostic, but functionally I am an atheist. And I believe in being pro-life because I believe in the greatness of humanity. And because, personally, I would love to see human redundancy in this galaxy and in the universe. I want to see humans get off this planet. And I think by killing the unborn, killing humans before they're born, the mass killings that we have going on, it to me is it's not... It's not cool, man. Sometimes you want to say something and say something brilliant, but you get the lizard brain is just like outraged, so you don't know what to say. But I'm against abortion. I think that abortion is wrong and it's cruel. That doesn't mean, though, that I'm against things like the morning after pill or alternatives to abortions. I think that adoptions are always going to be an important way for us to save the lives of children. There are so many problems when you say, oh, I'm just pro-life or I'm just pro-choice. One of the problems, of course, is that when you're talking about if you're pro-life or if you're pro-choice, well, if you say you're pro-life, well, a problem is that doctors will have to be able to perform abortions in some circumstances where the life of the mother is perhaps being threatened. And you may say that that is a small amount, and yes, it is a small amount of women that will need to abort a pregnancy in order to absolve themselves against absolve themselves, of course, of these responsibilities. But when you're talking about abortion, the issue here is that you have to teach a doctor how to perform that function. And how can you prosecute someone for something that you train them to do? So it is a bit of a problem there when you're talking about being strictly pro-life or strictly pro-choice, but I think it's very important for us to understand what it really means to be pro-life. And a secular humanist, I think, actually makes an argument for against abortion that is much stronger than any religious person, because my reasons for doing so are rooted in physiology, biology, and an understanding of evolution and evolutionary psychology. I think I understand why people want to have abortions, but imagine yourself in a situation where perhaps instead of killing the child, it would be possible for the child to be saved through technological means. Like perhaps if there was a stasis, we could put the child in a birthing machine, for example, that could nourish them and gestate the child until they were able to survive on their own. And what if the procedure for removing the child and giving them that opportunity, putting them in that machine, would be less invasive than an abortion as it is now? Wouldn't that be ethical to try and institute that kind of a policy? But again, I wouldn't want the government involved because, again, I don't want the government involved in our healthcare decisions. But morally, ethically, we should talk about what it means to be pro-life, and we should have a culture of life and defend life, and especially the lives of children. That's very important that the president send out that message that he is a moral, upstanding leader. I don't have to be religious for that. I can believe in morality and ethics and have a conscience and know how to treat my fellow man and to love life as much as any religious person. And I think that as a Libertarian presidential candidate, perhaps we might have a little mini revolution on our hands in the sense that there might be a lot of people out there who want to hear this kind of a message. So do me a favor. This is the end of the broadcast. Give me $3, send me $3 to austinpetersen2016.com. I think that I might have promised some people that I was going to sing some Christmas carols. I might have changed my mind just because I am so tired right now after having been on this for 40 minutes. But yeah, Ashley wants to say something. Come and lean in here on.
All right. I'm looking for an intern right now in this area.
Oh yeah, and we're on the border of Kansas and Missouri, in
right.
Kansas City.
So if you're nearby and you're wanting to volunteer, do any kind of help, I mean, Come check out the campaign headquarters.
Yeah.
It's fabulous.
Yes, it is. It is. But we don't own it. It's
we
a
don't
rental.
own it. It's
we're
a
not
rental.
rich.
No, we're not rich.
We got it for like
we
way
need
cheap.
$3 donations, so we're not trying to.
We do need your $3.
But we're renting. But yeah, come check out the campaign headquarters. We really need all the help we can get. I need an intern badly. Well, you just.
Yeah, interns. All right.
Yeah, you need one too, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so guys, AustinPetersen2016.com. Send us $3 or send us some information. I'm going to hop on right now. It looks like there's a lot of people here, and I want to try and answer some of these people's questions in there. So I'll give you another 5. I'll give you 5 more minutes of question and answer session, guys.
Thanks for all the questions,
Yeah, exactly.
guys.
And then I've got to
really
run.
great.
Let's see. Coming out as a secular humanist, so true. These are just people cheering us on, which we love. But unfortunately, my computer just isn't working today. Sorry, guys. Just not. Send us some new computers. Send us some new campaign information. Thanks very much for everything. Dean Davison, shout out. Shout out to all our volunteers. Adam Puff. Dean Easton Sanders, you're the man.
Yeah,
Easton,
no
thank you so much for all your generous donations,
Very
dude.
much.
You know, we haven't gotten any rich people yet to give us like a lot of money, but we are getting some. We are doing fairly well, just getting those $3 donations and stepping them up. Dean, thanks very much for the for starting the Virginia State Libertarian page. Thank you to our volunteers. You know, at Revolution, we're not going to have a lot of money, perhaps, but we will build a movement based made out of flesh and blood. That's you. That's you and me. That's you people. So join the Freedom Ninja Army, and I will turn you into samurais. Let's get down to business to defeat the status. Did they send me daughters when I asked? Well, what rhymes with status? For sons. Thanks, guys. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
We'll see you tomorrow.
We'll see you tomorrow.